The Wavelengths present a conversation with everyday people doing extraordinary things, making the world a better place. Meet Phil Fewster, a facilitator and the founding member of Real Eyes Meditation and Wellness Center. Phil claims the title of Chief Cook and Bottle Washer, provides a physical environment for growth and learning, supports other practitioners in sharing their services, creates opportunities for healing and reflection, and asks pertinent questions and shares love and acceptance during his many gatherings, such as a sound bath or a drumming circle or a fire circle or meditation group, and more. We hope you enjoy our conversation with Phil. I'm Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sandy.
Hi, I'm Jante, and we are the Wavelengths.
And today we're going to have a conversation with Phil Fewster. He won't give me a title because he's so incredibly humble, and I mean that very seriously. He likes to say he threw out to call him Chief Cook and Bottle Washer. He's behind the Realized Meditation organization, which you'll get contact information at the end of this conversation, at the end of the video. But as I said, his story to me is beautiful and amazing, and he's an amazing person. So here's Phil Fewster. And Phil, why don't you first start sharing what type of work you're doing, like with Realized Meditation and your shop and that sort of stuff?
Sure. Thanks for having me. Basically, the name of our center is called Realize, trying to help people realize their divinity within. But in that realization, not escaping from their experiences that they came in here to have in the relationships to help develop those experiences. And so we try to help people, first of all, mainly with meditation, some with prayer and other things like that, but just have a place where they can come to discover meditation. And really, for me, meditation is more synonymous perhaps with the word relationship or relations. And so it's through meditation relating and connecting with yourself, where you are in your path, or maybe your higher self, depending on where you might connect with that, or maybe it's connecting with others, or sharing your gifts with the community, whatever it is. It all starts from a state of being, which is that meditative state. So that's what we try to help people do, is just to have a place where they can discover themselves and discover their potential and act from there.
And you also support other practitioners, right?
Yeah, well, basically, we just try to we try to really not have the vision to be my personal vision. We try to allow that vision to be fluid, and so it's based on whoever shows up, and we grow based on whoever shows up, and maybe they'll have some things they want to learn, or some things they want to teach, or some things they want to share. And so yeah, we open it up for anyone to share things. We like to say, as long as they come with an open mind and respectful heart, and we'd like them to share it.
I also, before we get any further, I would also love you to share what you have on the property, because you have this gorgeous property with many options available to people.
Yeah, so inside we have a crystal and plant room, and so we try to have crystals and other types of things that sometimes people bring some things to sell as well, to support them in their journeys, but it's also to support us as we're growing out. And then connected in through is a larger great room. That's where we have our meditations or classes or sound baths or whatever. And then outside, it's a 6-acre property, and we have a 24-foot teepee. We have a large kind of medicine wheel fire area just for having some talks around the fire. We have a larger labyrinth. We have a sweat lodge and some nature trails and other things like that, I guess.
And it is
Sounds
beautiful.
wonderful.
Thanks.
It really does sound like a beautiful, magical space. And I would love to know what led you, if you would like to share your journey to get to this point.
Um, yeah, it's a tough one because it's hard to know where to begin. And, but really, it's not so much what led me, it's just to trust the leading, I guess, to get out of the way of sometimes your own self. And if you just kind of allow yourself to be guided and you have a trust in that, then you open yourself up to really discovering what are your gifts and likewise what are your weaknesses.
Yes.
But both to be cherished. And from there, getting out of the way. And so, for instance, there was I'll kind of give a pattern of it, I guess. There was a time when I was, I had 6 businesses. I had a law firm, a tax firm, a finance firm, all those kinds of things. And along that path, I live in Maryland, and so I was debating whether I want to live in the city still, and get a penthouse, or go get a house in the country somewhere. And over the course of about 6 months of going back and forth, one night I had a dream that reminded me of intuitive experience, one of my first ones when I was a little kid at a monastery, where there was a spinning wheel, and you chose the right color, you would win $1. And I chose it correctly so many times in a row that a crowd started gathering around a little bit, until finally I didn't trust my intuition. And so that was one of my first teachings. Anyway, I never knew where that monastery was. The night before I went to go to my house, or the house I was going to look at next after that 6 months, I had a dream that reminded me of that when I was at the monastery. And on the way to the house, I ended up passing that monastery. It ended up being just a mile and a half away from where the house was. And so that was my indication that told me to get that house. And so I ended up getting this big house that I really didn't need, but it ended up turning out to be next to Sundance grounds. And then further down the road, I decided to pretty much give away my wealth. And along that path, other things happened. And eventually I was debating on, I moved out of that house, and I was debating on getting a farm down in Virginia, starting there. But then I had another intuition that guided me to kind of, let's say, start up Realize at a place that turned out to be right in alignment from where my house used to be. So where my house used to be in the Sundance grounds, it's the second oldest Sundance grounds in the country, and it's the only one with a living tree.
Oh, that's fascinating. Could you elaborate a little bit on the intuition that you had to start Realize? Was it a dream, or was it just an instant knowing, or how would you describe it?
A lot of times, like my things that come to me, I tell people it's a download, but it's not really. It's just a knowing. In a way, I think I was blessed in that I kind of raised myself, and I never really even read a book until I went to law school. And so that kind of kept me from going the traditional routes of looking for answers outside of myself, just trying to wing it and find answers and just say, what if I did know? And so part of it is a knowing, but also part of it is a not knowing, and having just a faith. And so I was guided to next go to that church, and it turned out that church there was a big tree at that church where I started realize, and I just had a small portion of it, of the church. And I was just renting there at the time. Didn't even have enough money to start up Realize or anything like that. And then a garden center down the street closed, and we were able to get about $30,000 worth of stuff for about $1,000 to get ourselves started. But directly west, a mile and a half in alignment, I didn't realize at the time, but was the Sundance ground in that tree. And then a mile and a half even further down on the other end of the Sundance was, in a straight line, was the tree at the monastery from my first vision when I was a kid. And so part of it is knowing, and part of it is not knowing. It's just allowing yourself to go with the flow.
Right, allowing yourself to go with the flow and trust in your higher self.
And also not to be, I guess, in a way, I kind of came from nothing. I have really nothing to lose. And since I'd already given away most of my wealth and everything else, it made it a little bit simpler. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it for most people, but it's a character trait of mine is that I like being on the edge and and I like being challenged and challenging others and being in my uncomfortable areas, because that's where I'm going to be challenged the most, to see the potential.
So can you tell us a little bit more about your music and working with the crystal bowls?
Well, really the way that came about was I ended up going to a sound bath at this place called the Shaman Shack a while back. And there was an elder there who actually had come to the Sundance grounds a couple of times, but I didn't know him through that. And he kind of followed the Toltec tradition. And each Sunday he would have a sound bath with singing bowls at 11 a.m. And before that, he would have drums laid out and other instruments. He was a Native American flute maker. And he would allow people to come in and just start picking up an instrument and playing and kind of getting in sync, I guess you could say. And so anyway, he was a really neat guy, really special guy. We didn't get to spend too much time together, but nonetheless, he had a warm heart, and so he touched me. And down the road, when we were set up our meditation center, we were looking at different things we could offer. We put it out there if anyone else wanted to come in and start doing it. And one of our friends who'd also gone there, he was trained to start doing singing bowls. And so we wanted to follow that tradition because that man had passed away. And so we started offering singing bowls on Sunday mornings in honor of him to keep the tradition going.
That's really beautiful. And you do both crystal bowls and the Tibetan metal bowls, right?
Yep, we do.
And don't you have other instruments as well?
Oh yeah, we have all kinds of things laying around. We have some hand drums, and we have some rattles, and we have some harps and didgeridoos and other things like that. And then obviously people's voices.
So it's an interactive, people come and someone starts the sound meditation, and then people can join in as they feel inspired. So it's like an open circle.
Yeah. Sometimes we do it as an open circle. Sometimes we do it as a drum before. On Sundays, typically what we do is, so basically whenever someone else isn't there, that's kind of like when I fill in for whatever it might be. So for instance, we have a sweat lodge. If someone else, elder, isn't there to pour, then I'll pour. And the gentleman who used to pour, now he just comes once a month. And so now I took over for Sundays until someone else comes along. And basically, although the format on Sundays is pretty much the same, each Sunday we play them a little different, or well, sometimes we'll have a talk beforehand, or sometimes we'll have a song beforehand, or a prayer beforehand, or we always mix it up. I guess the one constant is that we're not constant, in that we try to make it a reflection of life. So the idea is, while people might be coming to our place to find comfort or to find an answer or to connect with community, the truth is that they're finding themselves. They're the Axis Mundi of the universe. And so then what we want to encourage them to do is then to go out and express their truth out in the world. To essentially each one of them to become their own center and to take it out and to share it, just like we're doing at our center.
That's really beautiful.
Thanks.
So would you say it's fair to say that you have created this beautiful space that reflects the energies of those who were there? It's an opportunity for growth and learning, and also for expression on however that presents itself, but within certain parameters called it supports personal growth. Excuse me.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of expressing it. Maybe I'll have to write that down at some point so we can share it.
You'll have to listen to the video because I have no idea what I just said. I don't remember it. But anyway. Yeah.
The idea in essence is maybe I kind of picked up on this in the corporate world a little bit, but rather than having hard and fast rules of here's the way to do it, because see, if I try to do everything just here's the way that I know it, then I'm not really reaching near as many people because it's just my path and my alignment. And there's so many people that are on different paths. And so the idea is to really just set some really outside boundaries, stay within these boundaries, and then give a kind of a vision, but also values. So that way, when you have a good set of values, what happens is you can bring in all kinds of different personalities and they can interact and they can contribute. And then when there's a decision that needs to be made, it's not the personalities making the decision, it's the values.
So strong foundation there, putting values first.
Well, yeah, but like everything else, it's just words. And so the idea is try to have a way where people can put their words into action. But
I know because I holographically now see the energy of words. Words, of course, are very impactful and very can be very powerful. And it seems that by using the values, putting those energetic concepts into a word format, if you will, even though it's probably English as opposed to some other language, the essence of the word is there, the energy of the words are there, and creating that as a foundation is very powerful. So do you mind sharing those values, those words?
Well, really, I'd first say that the idea is, in a way, the example that was given to me before is like if you go to light a candle and you have a flame flickering, and then you light another candle and you have a flame flickering, and you join those two candles together, the flame exponentially grows. Mm-hmm. And so words, just like emotions or just like a tree or just like a person, they all have a spirit. And the idea is to align those. So if someone aligns their being with their words, then that's a few lights come together, just like those candles, and they grow more exponentially. And so the words in of themselves is just another spirit, but it's to get that motive behind it,
right?
To get those going forward.
Which is why it's cool that you've made that your foundation.
Yeah, and really, in a way, it's without a plan, and so it's kind of because really to have the plan. Like if I was to come out a lot of this from my business background, I have a pretty vast business background, this place would be wholly different. You know, if I put a business plan together, or if I had marketing strategies, or if I used my natural A personality to drive things through, you know, things might be much further along or whatever, or maybe they would have sunk, who knows? But the idea is that trying not to be attached to those things. And so just allow them to flow as they're supposed to flow. And sometimes it can be partly disheartening and partly hard to deal with when things are slow, uh, or they're not going as much, and you have to remember to pull yourself back from it and not make it about you. You know,
Yeah.
a really important part of it. I think the foundational piece of it all in relation to the values is really what what that meditative state is about, which is self-love. And so self-love is really discovering your truth and being able to take that out into the world and not be so swayed by other people's comments or thoughts or actions or their inactions or whatever it may be. And so that's one of the things that we try to do, is allow people to objectively discover who they are. And when you start to get into a community where you're comfortable enough, the idea should be that the community should help you to get uncomfortable. Because sometimes that comfort level can be kind of deceiving. You know, like if someone lacked confidence, when they look at being confident, they might see it as arrogance because their comfort level was in being not confident. Do you see?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like the polarity of things. A lot of times people see things as being the opposites when really they're just the other side of a coin. They're actually part of the same thing. And so that's another really important thing that we're working on building out here. You see, like most of this center isn't about me and my purpose. This is kind of a giveaway. What I tend to do and what I'm building up is basically I have soul templates that I do for people, and then also have I'm building out a system so people can kind of figure out where they are on their path and what is their next steps to discover their life lessons, their soul purpose, and things like that.
You said that you build soul templates for people. I'd love to know more about that and how that would look like.
So how it kind of got started was the first vision quest I ever did. So I was up on the hill under Lakota traditions, and during that, the message came through, do like Pythagoras. And so I had to figure out what that meant to me. And so back when Pythagoras, I guess the history would go that he had schools. Actually, I'll go back even a little bit further if you want. I guess we're just shooting the breeze anyway. And so before Pythagoras was born, his parents were shipping magnates, and they went to the oracles of Delphi, and they wanted to know about their business. Whether, because back then supposedly what would happen is you would go and ask questions to make sure your ships were going out to sea when it was safe for them to come out of harbor. And the oracles said to the parents, the ships will be fine, but forget that, you're about to have a very special child that's going to be born and needs to do some work to raise a consciousness for humanity. And so anyway, they took Pythagoras all around, traveled around, given him all kinds of teachings and wisdoms, I guess you could say, experiences. And he ended up developing these schools. And in those schools, he built the schools based on what he considered to be the foundations of the wisdoms of teaching. And so they had to know mathematics, they had to know astronomy, and they had to know music. And so in a way, that's what kind of got me. I really didn't have an interest in it, but I started learning astrology, for instance. And in that astrology, I started developed out, I think it was either 11 or 13 different tarot cards. And for a while, I did maybe 50 or 75 readings, and it was really nice to help people. And then I just sat them down and then didn't really look at them again for about 8 years or so. And then later on, I picked them up and then started taking the next steps with those and started developing them into a system to help people figure out what is their purpose. And so with that, I kind of created maybe about 2,000 different templates, generally speaking. And what I do is I use a little bit of astrology to get a starting point. And then within that, I have tons of writings. And then obviously all the writings really are other people's writings when it comes down to it. but I go and I try to see where those all connect with that person, and I'll come up with maybe about 50 pages of writings. And then what I'll do is I'll start narrowing it down and keep narrowing until I get to a theme. And then within that theme, then I'll be narrowing it down to specifics. And so within the soul template, what I do is I try to help people first discover what's their personal lessons that they've come into this life to learn, to help their individual work through certain things. And so what I consider, I kind of consider the chakras a roadmap. The lower chakras being the individual self, that and self-awareness and self-consciousness, and those have to do with your personal lessons. And then eventually those over time transmute into group consciousness, which is your higher chakras, which has to do about your giveaway. And that's your getting closer towards your soul purpose. And so within the template, what I try to do is help people discover maybe some of their lessons and then how that might connect up to part of their purpose. And then the idea is to help them to discover where are they on their path and maybe next steps that they could take to help to start experiencing and expressing that path. Sorry, kind of long-winded.
Very interesting, though. Very interesting. Sign me up.
Me too.
Anyway, if I remember correctly, it takes quite a bit of time for you to do that. Isn't that right?
Yeah, and hopefully over time it'll condense. But yeah, right now it takes me like 50 to 60 hours to do each one.
So that's very time consuming.
Yeah, it's about $1 an hour.
That's all you charge?
Basically.
Wow, that's quite a gift, Phil.
Yeah.
Quite a gift. Thank you for that. So one of our questions is what makes you and your work unique, but it sounds to me like everything you do is unique. Not necessarily unique to you, but certainly unique from the perspective, and I've traveled a lot. It's like yours is a blending of many paths. Is how would you agree?
It's basically that. So in a way, the soul template and the way that I construct them is it's a microcosm of what my path is. And so it's, like you said, a gathering of experiences and then bring those experiences in. And that's basically part of what life is gaining knowledge. And so knowledge is really important because to me, it gives the two things that any person needs to succeed, which is confidence and a feeling of support system behind them. But the idea with knowledge is eventually it's also limiting because it's still outside of you. And to become a master of anything, you need to eventually be able to express it in its simplest form, and then also to be able to find it from within. And so eventually that knowledge that was helping to build you is that thing that eventually is boxing you in. And so it's always to keep looking for where's rooms for your ignorance to expand and to let go of some of the things that at one point was your steady foundation, but now it's the thing that's weighing you down. And in doing that, finding ways to express and transmute your knowledge into wisdom so that you can share it with others without being so attached to it.
That's beautiful. You shared that you had the vision or dream of you as a child spinning the wheel and earning $1 with every spin. Was this something that you, not that literal experience, but having the intuition? Do you remember, or dreams or visions, do you remember having those as a child?
Very rarely. Like I don't see my path as one that I would necessarily recommend for others or anything like that. I wouldn't even say, I will say that before I was 30, I did not have a deep thought in my life, and I did not have a deep relationship. So I really was starting from maybe close to ground zero, as you could say. And so I guess in a way it can be an inspiration in that it's never too late, because things can happen in an instant. It's only our own minds that think it takes a while. So if you think it's going to take 20 years to learn something, then the chance of it being learned in 10 years is really small. And so that's how I kind of propelled myself through all of life. I took away all the excuses and the things that people think they need to get from the outside, and I just say, what if I did know? And I go from there, because really what you end up knowing should be, in a way, kind of common sense, right? Or else why are they doing it that way anyway? So you should be able to, in a way, reverse engineer it right in your mind instantaneously, as if you already did know. Because at some point, all of us come together anyway, and we share the same experiences. And so it's just a matter of getting out of the way of those limitations that we put in place with time and space, I guess you could say.
Was there
But to answer your question a little bit more, there were some occasions where you could say certain miraculous things maybe happened that other people consider kind of special, but they're pretty few and far between. But I would consider everything to be as you appreciate it, an asset that builds you towards later in life. So later in life, as you get away from the individual self, your perception expands. And with that expanding perception, then you can start to see further along that time-space continuum to see how all the dots connect, in essence. And
was there, you said that prior to 30, I believe the phrase you used was you didn't have a deep thought. Was there
for sure.
Was there a specific incident that caused you to shift, or was it just kind of like an organic shifting? General.
Well, when I moved back to Maryland to set up my businesses here, I think it stopped being about me. And so it wasn't so me focused. It started being about helping my employees and staff and everyone. And so, for instance, I didn't even know what values were, literally. And so as I started teaching them, I started learning them. And so through teaching and creating things, I learned it for myself as I was teaching. So I got kind of out of the way of myself and made it more about others. Then myself also got to go along for the ride with the others. But, there was I didn't notice at the time because I wasn't really paying attention. And a lot of times you don't, they say, for instance, when Columbus first came to America, the Native Americans on the shore couldn't even tell they were ships. They needed the shaman to tell them that they were ships. And once they said that these are sails of a ship, not clouds, then they could see it. So until you kind of bring it into your consciousness, you don't even see what it is. And so there was times, like, for instance, I might be sitting in a meeting with 15 managers, I'd be talking like this, and they wouldn't even raise their hand. They'd think a question. I would just turn to them and answer their question and just keep going without even recognizing I were doing it, and I would freak them out. And so I guess in part there was certain things there, but really not even things that I recognized. It was just it was there all along. It was just waiting for me to become conscious of it, I guess.
So if I understand you correctly, you're basically saying that it was a process where you learned to get out of your own way, and that was illuminating for you.
Yeah, it was a process of going from success to significance.
And
so it was less about me, and it was more about them. For instance, when I was first got out of law school, I kind of got lucky and got a corporate counsel job. And one of the only books I had looked at was called The 48 Laws of Power. And it was based on Sun Tzu. And it told you how to really propel yourself. And of those, I don't even remember doing it, but I discovered later I did. I put 23 of those on a little plaque And those were my guiding things. And within a year or so, year and a half, I was chief operating officer of a company and all that kind of stuff. Had millions of dollars, all that kind of stuff. Fast forward to when I moved back home and had the companies, I was moving offices, and I came across that plaque. And when I looked at the plaque, I discovered that at that point in my life, everything on the plaque was the exact opposite. You see, initially the plaque really worked because it propelled me. I became successful, right?
Mm-hmm.
But to build a company, if you try to just build yourself up, eventually it's like a human pyramid, it's going to collapse. But if you focus on building the ones that are your foundation, your team up, that will propel you up. And so actually the 48 laws of power were great for individual short-term success, but disaster for long-term significance. That makes sense.
Yeah, it makes total sense. It's like your approach now is significantly more harmonious and inclusive from the sense of it's including as many people as choose to be included and
Yeah.
supporting the whole.
And I never realized it maybe until just now. The word realize means to make real. And so what I was making real then is essentially one of the big points about people making a choice in this lifetime, which is about whether it's going to be, your love is going to be all about yourself or it's going to be about others. And when you make it about others, you get to go along for the ride, and it's just so much more profound of an experience.
It's pretty cool. Thank you for being you.
Yeah,
I mean,
you
I
for
know
being-
it's interesting because I've got quite a few more years than you in a physical body. And I learned so much from you, and I'm really grateful for that and grateful for you and what you share. And it's nice to see how that came about, to hear how that came about. So it's
The
pretty.
way that I see it, it's not really me. It's in the same way that I would teach someone that when as you get closer to the essence of who you are, a true understanding isn't with the thinking mind, it's what is standing under. That's what understanding means.
Right.
Standing under is that permanent self that's going through many lifetimes, you see. And as you get closer, as we get closer towards understanding that truth, then we can see it in others. And then when someone has like an emotional reaction, sometimes you realize that that's not their soul that is standing under, that's explaining that with my understanding. It's just an emotion, just like that spirit that we talked about earlier in this talk. That every emotion has a lead voice, and sometimes people allow that emotion to come and live with them, and then they give it a consciousness by giving it a story. And so it's the same thing with me. And so I look at it from all realms, and so a lot of things that I share or and act and come up, they're really not coming from me as the one individual person. So I'm not attached to them because it's not me. So I don't take credit for them. I think it's a collection of everyone that's in our experience.
Like I said, very humble. But it makes sense. I mean, it makes sense. We're a conglomeration of all of us. So,
We're all helping one another.
yeah, yeah. Ladies, do you have anything else you would like to ask?
Well, I'm just taking in all of your beautifully expressed wisdom that you've shared, and really, I'm just feeling in a very meditative state as I absorb and integrate. So I'm just taking a moment to feel free to share anything.
It's more than enough.
comes to mind.
It's a very fascinating story, and to be able to provide a safe space for others to explore themselves and to have relationships with others and to understand more about themselves, yet being able to reach out and understand others and finding a balance of yourself and being connected to others and of finding a good center point for all of that. And, you know, sometimes you have to learn one thing to survive and about yourself, and then you can, you know, turn it around and help others find their way, whatever way that is, but providing a space to and different ways that they can explore to possibly find their way is it's just a wonderful story, and being able to provide that for others.
Thank you. I will say maybe one thing that's a little bit different in our perspective is that I find that most people, especially people that have more spiritual gifts and stuff like that, they tend to get out. They tend to try to want to spend a lot of time in that spiritual realm, and they don't realize that the spiritual realm they're actually spending it in is that astral realm. So there's realms beyond, and in the realm that most people spend spiritually, because that's where they're built to go, it's the realm of lessons and desires and ambitions and fears and prides. And so sometimes they get a spiritual insight or answer and they see it as godly, when it's really just a one more experience amongst many. And to not give it more credibility than any other thing. Because, and then what some people do is they get better at building out with their spiritual relations, but they don't work on themselves individually with their own emotional well-being. And so they don't really have the foundation to process the information once it comes in, because they're so caught up in their own desires, or they're only looking at things through the perspective of one lifetime, to where it really narrows their ability to do the work. And then what happens is when they go to do their healing work, a lot of times, even with great intentions, they end up doing their healing work from below with those lower chakras, because they still have a desire, their desire with the outcome. And so the idea is just to focus on your intention and your attention, and then just let creation do its work, you see. And so that it takes a lot to first really be working through that individual or personal lessons before getting out there. Everyone wants to get out there into the spiritual stuff, but they don't tend to want to do the stuff that's, you know, the work that they came into this lifetime to do individually. I think it's really important to do both.
Yes.
Really, what we try to do is teach people that there's two questions to try to ask in every encounter or environment or situation, whether it be with a person or whether a person be at work or a co-worker, like a stepmother, or it be with an emotion or a thought, whatever it is, whatever they encounter, ask two questions. The first one is, what's it here to teach or to learn? And the second one is, how do I shed love on it?
What was that second one again?
How do I shed love on it?
Shed love on it.
And so the idea is, with that first question, if it's there for you to teach or to learn, you're working on individual stuff, then be selfish. Focus on that and really make that a priority. What people tend to do is they find 4 or 5 things to work on, and then they don't make anything a priority. It's like having 5 girlfriends. You might as well have none, because you're not going to be able to keep all of them happy and keep yourself happy, right? Because you're not really focused. So the idea is, with that first question, when you're working on the individual self, own that and be happy with that. And then when you're not working on the individual self, it's time for you to shed love on it and then get out of the way. Then it's not about you. You see, it's about giveaway. And so that's why that's why we say shed love on it, because it's not you as the person. It's It's basically an understanding that goes deeper than who you are in this one lifetime.
That's a beautiful way of looking and finding that balance of working on yourself, and then to be able to share it out into the world, or to expand upon it and shed love on it.
Shed love.
So, because sometimes someone might be working on something individually with an emotion that's really draining or low vibration or whatever, and they're seeing it as, hey, I want to be up there. I want to be working on this stuff with wisdom and with love, but that's not where they truly are. And if where they truly are is working on this deep, darker emotion, by sharing that with others, they're going to be able to help someone else in a way that that other person couldn't. You see, so it's always a time and a purpose. And then sometimes just being able to share what you're going through is enough to help another person heal. You know? So it's really important.
Start where you are and be okay with it.
Yeah. That's the key.
So, all righty then. Anything else, ladies? Anything else you'd like to share, Phil?
No, just thank you. I think
Well, thank you.
this is my first talk of this type. So,
Well, thank you. It's really an honor to share
Thank
this
you.
space with you and to learn from you and with you.
well, we'll know that's true when you come up to visit and you sing a song for us.
I haven't even heard her sing.
Ooh. Alrighty
She has a
then.
beautiful voice.
When have you? Thank you.
Well,
Well-
you start singing a little bit.
Anyway.
Anyway, this well, thank you, Phil.
It's nice to meet each other.
So I want to share, and of course, this will be in the end credits. You can reach Phil through his website, realeysmeditation.com. That's REALEYES meditation.com. And his email is events@realisemeditation.com. Check out his website. If you're in Maryland, definitely try some of the wonderfully, you do several things every week, as I recall, not just the sound baths, but don't you also have yoga?
Yeah, so each month is different. The standard things we have is once or twice a month we'll have a talking and healing circle around the fire, and then we'll mix in some different types of meditations each time. We do have one community member who offers we call it plant yoga, and so she'll introduce a different plant for the season around the moon cycle and stuff like that. And then we just mix in all kinds of other events and teachings. Someone last week did a class on core values. This week coming up, we're having community tarot, where everyone can just ask a question and then the whole community answers, gives their feedback or intuition on what that card might mean. And so we just try to mix in different things each week. So really just check out our calendar online if you're interested.
Lots of interesting things and quite a variety from I was there once when a shamanic practitioner did a presentation in activity. And then another practitioner did which I believe she teaches yoga, but she also did a breathing exercise. And then just this last Sunday, somebody helped or facilitated people making bracelets for themselves, I believe, like creating a deeper relationship with themselves.
We did a meditation to connect up and to kind of, in a way, almost like just building a bond and a connection and making that bracelet for someone else. And so it's more about the relationship.
A large variety of experiences available. Of course, along with Sweat Lodge, I want to check that one out when it's a little warmer. Not that you really need warmth with a sweat lodge, but it's walking outside that I'm thinking about, right?
Oh.
If it's too cold. But yeah, and eventually walking the labyrinth when it's a little warmer for this physical form. But so grateful that you did this with us, Phil. Really appreciate you. I have grown so much in knowing you. Certainly expanded my perceptions and understandings. And I appreciate that you're letting us share you with whomever's willing to watch the video at some point, right? So we'll just
Pleasure to be a
trust.
part of it. Thank you. And it was nice.
I'm sorry, you're breaking up. Could you lean a little
It was a pleasure
closer?
to be part of this experience with you guys, and I wish you all the best as well. And hopefully there'll be a time when you make your way to our center and can share some of your teachings as well.
Thank you. I look forward to getting to know more and connecting with you.
All right. So thank you for those who have joined us with this video. Hope you enjoyed learning more about Phil and Real Eyes meditation. And until next time, enjoy life.
We hope you have enjoyed our conversation with Phil. Phil can be reached at the website www.realeyesemeditation.com or via email at events@realeyesemeditation.com. Please take a moment to visualize our planet Earth bathed in white light. Everything within, on, and surrounding the planet filled with this white light, and all energies in whatever form moving into and staying balanced for the highest good of all concerned.